When up in New Hampshire's White Mountains, I visited Mount Washington, the highest peak in the Presidential Range. One of 3 ways of getting to the top was by the vintage cog railway. Its base station is already 2,700 feet up, and the summit is another 3,500 or so feet higher. Although the original track dates back to 1869, the engines and rolling stock have been regularly updated. The main current engines are 600 horsepower biodiesels. Although the carriages may look Victorian, they actually only date from 1997. Originally the engines were steam powered, and this old one bears the Indian name for a local river. It is still used for the first journey of the day during the summit. I was happy to see that the clouds had finally cleared the mountain, because in the morning I tried to use the famous auto road. However, because of thick low cloud and icy conditions, it had been closed off at the halfway point for safety.
It took roughly 300 men, 3 years to build this railway, mostly of Irish and Italian. It was under construction in 1866. They finished it in 1869. If you look to the right, you'll notice that small green engine, the pepper sass. That was the first train to push passengers to the summit of Mount Washington, and its maiden voyage took roughly 6 hours. And that is a vertical steam boiler, which is unusual. They normally, steam engines, the boiler is horizontal on them. The reason why that's like that, it's actually on a pendulum. And as that train went up the mountain, that boiler was able to swing back and forth with the grade of the mountain to make sure that the water would stay level in the boiler at most places up there. So we have 3¼ miles of track on our mountain. The average grade that you'll be on today is 25%. The steepest grade is 37.41, which makes us the second steepest mountain climbing train in the entire world.
That's funny. I didn't even notice. I better put that on.
It's pretty colorful. You can see this time of year, besides the foliage, which is pretty much gone now, there's these red berries growing up in the tops of the trees. If you look up in the tops of the trees on both sides of the tracks, you're going to see these red berries. So you better get in a little bit of practice now, because later on you're going to have to try it on almost a 40% angle up there. You don't appear to be at an angle.
No, that's cheating. You got it here.
So the weather gets too severe for trees to survive, anything above 5,000 feet. We're also getting ready to approach this gray building on the right-hand side of it, as well as on the summit of the mountain.
The third way of getting up is to hike it, and the cairns seen here are marking the Appalachian Way. We did not get quite to the summit because we stopped at a point called Skyline. That was higher than the other mountains in the range, but was still sheltered from the fierce winds attacking the summit. At one time, the observatory had recorded a world record wind speed of 231 miles per hour.
He pushed us up. We're not coupled in by any means. We're just resting up against him. On the way back down, we're going to be resting up against him as well, following him along, and I'm going to use these brakes to take some of the weight off the engine for the trip down. Over here we have what is called the set brake. It is attached to the down mountain axle of the coach. And you usually wind this up and kind of leave it dragging a little bit, and you use the play brake over here to make up for the rest of the brake you need for the way down the mountain. It is attached to the up mountain axle of the coach, and it is the brake that's most used along the way.
We crawled back down the mountain at a stately 5 miles per hour.
Resort over in Whitefield, New Hampshire. Jacob's Ladder right here again. Steepest grade on our track system.
You're just showing off.
Anything less than 14 miles is considered a railway. Anything over 14 miles, they call it a railroad. So remember that if you ever hear it again, you'll know the difference between the two. The side must have been really warm, and the smokestack of the steam engine actually started melting the glass on this window along its way up the mountain. So it's pretty unique. We left it in the coach. So we're going to be stopping down there as well because we have one more train coming up the mountain. It is the 4:30 train. And if it passes in time, you'll be able to see the air brake system I told you about, air ride, underneath that train. Right there, you can see the air ride suspension. The one we're riding on is just stiff, it's rigid. There's no suspension on this train whatsoever. What makes that
Overall, an interesting experience with amazing views, although, having looked out at some of the rather basic track construction, I was quite glad when our brakeman got us safely back down to base station.